MBA, you got it? Nina, you're good too? Awesome. Advantage 1 is South Korea. Different missile defense capabilities between Japan and South Korea. Hamstring multilateral cooperation at the operational level. That's Hanada. Yamaguchi 18. Further enhance the coordination and credibility of the alliance operational levels to ensure seamless cooperation. Japan and US will need to identify gaps, different capabilities, possess acquisition. Then enhance cooperation, benefit the alliance capability, credibility, missile defense, and expand the alliance for the acquisition, taking into consideration interoperability, defense, and common operational picture. Must develop a multilateral system given the diverse and fluid dynamics of the regional security environment. Trilateral cooperation with RK with bilateral alliance must not depend on bilateral relations, but how Tokyo will develop its defense capabilities. The break is now the bridge to temporary truth over intel sharing and trade, but it can be reversed. Trilateral missile defense as key that's strong. Young 19 and major defense policy reversal. South Korea said it would decide to continue temporarily military intelligence sharing agreement with Japan previously said it would terminate amid ongoing tension symbol the country's previous security cooperation in the face of nuclear security threat movements based on the Tokyo then the arrangement at any time outcome the future negotiated with Japan trilateral cooperation among Japan, US, and South Korea extremely important how and Tokyo are fully out of which Japan's radar critical for analyzing North Korean missile test cooperation spills over to other areas. The plan is key to a trilateral relationship that's growing. 19 South Korea and Japan in unique position to work together despite enemy foster a multilateral operational relationship less susceptible turmoil politics and future scope and help promote better quality essential for increased quality, maintaining appropriate deterrent posture important to the uncertainty of denuclearization, tend to make sovereignty disputes increasingly likely, though go to war that's worth 16 South Korea and Japan tend to remain tenuous sovereignty disputes over Tokyo in the background bad climate. The Shaheen government asserted its claim in the near midst of armed conflict president sent Coast Guard vessels in a plane crew was not merely stable rival and would have used their draws in Russia and China this traffic. 19 new incident comes to China stepping up routine aerial naval activity, military to military ties steadily growing. Important development for both South Korea and Japan and over Tokyo Island shows ramification well beyond geopolitics. Other Korean peninsula, Russia along with China demonstrates desire to challenge South Korean and Japanese claims. So South Korea's decide to fuel actual shots to reflect how serious the evolving geopolitical situation is. Conversely, Japan's Tokyo alliance de-escalates multiple flashpoints at Davidson. 19 China's turning itself and Kaku Islands expanding ADIZ and ECS nuclear missile program flashpoint for conflict. Japan and South Korean security cooperation mitigate regional threats. Geopolitical consideration outweighs all causes. That's Matsuno. Then Park 19 while history is a prima facie cause geopolitical calculation actually given the relationship 1965 treaty signed based on the Cold War power politics deserves much more attention. Understanding the ongoing dispute underlying soldiers in larger forces beyond political disputes. Next advantage is North Korea. Risk of North Korean conflict is high and rising. Modernization public speeches prove their intentions are defensive. That are not defensive. That's McKeachern. 18. The younger Kim has demonstrated his effort to build the arsenal, expand his regime's coercive power. Kim not holding by a threat. Kim's development is not a defensive move. Kim accelerating nuclear advances, unprecedented. Brady told us that match word with action, not merely want to deter U.S. action, but seeks to leverage his nuclear status. Kim articulated nuclear doctrine in 2013 speech, belief diversifying his nuclear force provide leverage, not linked to U.S. presence. Focus on targets such as U.S. military bases, Japan, Guam, Alaska, and Hawaii. Kim Jong-un said nuclear attention not stop with preserving a regime survival. North Korea's history of lethal provocation. Revolutionary government should give us pause. The risk of unintended conflict escalation. Actions use of powerful weapons remains real. Accepting North Korean mysteries and underestimates an adversary who feels his survival is already assured and is looking for more in North Korea will engage in nuclear coercion absent effective BMD that goes nuclear and collapses assurances. That's Robert Thornton to be successful. Nuclear backbone requires credible demonstration to resolve North Korea. Leaders believe they can escalate without crossing the nuclear response threshold. They may employ nuclear weapons. Allies come to believe the U.S. has decoupled from their defense. Successful North Korean blackmail with that precedent calling into question credibility of security guarantees while validating that nuclear are useful for coercing against U.S. wide-ranging repercussions for international situation led a nuclear cascade. Lead them to conclude they can no longer count on U.S. security umbrella. Regional deterrence architecture must be effective. The key dangers of the potential for miscalculation of resolve. Mutual vulnerability deep unstable. Nuclear threats may not be credible if adversarially significant military action. Paul believes nuclear threshold heavily relies not reassuring to allies who seek protection in addition to deterrence. BMD to contribute to deterrence. The game changer must be effective and decisively influencing the adversary's assessment. Missile defense creates uncertainty because the range size required to provide assurance provides leadership time, reduces the political pressure for preemptive strike. BMD puts the burden of escalation on the adversary. BMD provides defense cooperation, signals resolve and push costs on the additional nukes. North Korean strike and South Korean preemption guarantee escalation. Only BMD can solve this. Kelly 15. As North Korea developed nuclear weapons, missile tech pressure on South Korea to take preemptive action will rise. South Korea continues an existential threat that's the greatest long-term risk to stability in Korea, more destabilizing North Korean collapse. The Korean nuclear race is not of stability, unlikely to ever achieve it. North Korea will not achieve second secure sector. U.S. satellite coverage makes it hard to conceal North Korea's nuclear weapons will always be highly vulnerable. Small side and democratic concentration makes the RRK an easy target. Nuclear weapons offer a conceivable route to North victory for a mix of counterforce or this southern military to destroy limited counter-value city strength, followed by invasion occupation. The U.S. could arrive at this absolute limit where the DPRK is right now. Further development takes us into the realm of nuclear blackmail, highly dangerous proliferation, offensive first strike. North Korean nuclearization coupled with rising South Korean paranoia expects South Korean planners to consider preemptive action draws in great power and cause extinction. This mentioned 17 war Korean peninsula draw on other nuclear powers, major power, China, Russia, Japan, recent largest militaries, economies in the world, have the world population strike to reignite the Korean War. Given the specter of nuclear war, the rational policies wanted de-escalation independently. They're planning an EMP attack now. That's Bedard. 18 communist government rewarded plan to use the weapons to launch an EMP attack. Dismantle technology. Computers report a new document shows acronym for electromagnetic pulse clearly printed. U.S. official of war that North Korea's offensive plan included the use of EMP weapons the use of the target to dismantle technology electronic grid, cause catastrophic lid collapse. Only advanced missile defense can solve this. Survive this 18, given the long history, North Korea double dealing in lying weapons. We need to consider ability to deploy 1 or 2 nuclear weapons secreted in electromagnetic pulses, finding incredible evidence that consider a real global threat, especially in North Korea. EMPs can devastate the entire grid, start by producing a shock, particularly devastating the SCADA. Many other things we take for granted. Koreans very close to developing this. Military needs to create ballistic missile defense because the single shot that would use EMP North Korea or Iran could attempt Navy could position destroyer and cruiser with Aegis system off the coast. Extinction, that's Fridman. 16 civilization cannot exist without electricity. Within days of blackout can encompass the entire planet. Generators run out of fuel, communication would cease, and water and food hospitals will not operate. Unpreparedness would result in societal collapse. BMD is key despite other forms of reassurances. North Korea might miscalculate and doubt the credibility of the U.S. security guarantee that Shinichi, 2 rogue states possess invulnerable missiles who may understand U.S. commitment to extended deterrence missile defense from ballistic missiles from being used as intimidation. North Korea will threaten WMD missiles. Rogue states deploy missiles capability of attacking the Japanese atomic power plants. Intercept capabilities indispensable. Missile defense increase incentive for missile buildup. No risk of turns. Perception of pursuit is inevitable. Thus, Green 17, their empirical reason doubt that the U.S. will voice any line signal regardless of force posture. Even if the U.S. reject deal and embraces MID, would be occurred the capability for other purposes. China would prefer U.S. seeking deal, regardless of U.S. declaration to the contrary. The alternative is less effective and more escalatory. We'd be forced to shift to nuclear threats. That's Robert. 14, U.S. has made a decisive strategic choice to remain engaged. U.S. has rejected mutual vulnerability with states like North Korea. U.S. nuclear threats may not be credible for the gray zone and red zone conflicts in the adversary fleet that significant military action involved beneath U.S. nuclear threshold. Nuclear threats may not be credible for reducing coercive value of aggressive threats. Heavy reliance on nuclear threats is not reassuring to allies who seek assurance that the plan United States federal government just introduced foreign military sales of the long distance range discrimination radar to Japan. Solvency. The LRDR enables North Korean aggression and hamstrings Japan's SOCO security co-op. That's lead 18. Japan's chosen unproven developmental radar to support the Aegis Ashore, selecting LRDR over the AMDR ANSPY-6, put Japan at a step with other allies. U.S. is upgrading ANSPY-6. North Korea continues to be one of the greatest global threats, more real, and Japan continued improvements in defense capabilities critical. Choosing LRDR to risk developmental delays, challenge and integration, decreasing the pressure. Japan missile defense system in partnership with the U.S. and South Korea must be able to determine targets in a matter of seconds. Shooting LRDR represents significant operational risk. Will South Japan-U.S. alliance partnership with South Korea procurement is difficult. Realistic testing is expensive. ANSPY-6 already undergoing testing, proving its value in contrast to LRDR. Japan is chosen because it believes lifestyle costs would be the lowest. It would be wise to reconsider maximize sensor and interceptors interoperable with Japan's partners. Regional integration, unlike power integration, operationalize it. Shoot, look, shoot. That's mandating. The importance of integration missile defense cannot be overstated. Ability to seamlessly process data while reducing gaps and vulnerabilities, maximizing capabilities, expand asset footprints, opportunities, integrating C2 nodes, sensors, weapon fully, enable shoot, look, shoot, integration expands capability by reducing intercept required for military sales, play an important role in upgrading capabilities while investing in future technology. Japan plans to build 2 Aegis and short sight by early 2020. That's crucial for both early detection and discrimination. That's 950 by linking MD system in Japan and South Korea use Japan-South Korea arrangement, integrate the MD system with complete Northeast Asia. MD system under U.S. leadership. Japan would intercept ballistic missile aimed at the U.S. Early detection ballistic missile pivotal would be premised on Korea, U.S. and Japan sharing information, forming trilateral MD layering. Makes BMD effective, but continued testing is key. That's cancer. 10, 5 of the 7 flights were effective. We learned from more from failure than success. There's adequate testing in R&D 2007. There were 89% success rate. While no system is perfect, even modestly effective defense data indicate far more than modestly effective work continue remains to increase enhance discrimination technique capabilities, focusing on past tax effort. The internally is linear. Every percentage point of increased effectiveness matters. That's cancer. 10 system will not be perfect. No defensive system can be 100% effective. However, it should be adequate to serve the purpose of saving a very significant number of lives. R&D testing should continue to enhance capability against evolving threats. Deployment should be done in connection with controls to relate to new posture. I'm good for cross.
We'll take prep.
Cool.
Sorry. And 45.
Okay, I'm back.
You good for pause?
Yeah, hold up. Just starting a timer. Yep, I'm good.
Okay, so the internal link to the first advantage is SOCO-Japan relations. The internal link to the second one is making BMD more effective, right?
Correct.
Okay, let's talk about SOCO-Japan. What piece of evidence do you have that you think says the plan is sufficient to heal the rift between them?
So there's 2 components of it. There's the first that's like plan is key to missile defense integration, and then there's the second that's like missile defense integration key to the alliance. Which portion are you talking about?
Key to alliance, sure.
Yeah, that's the first and third piece of evidence. The first one says that different missile defense capabilities is creating a rift, and that high level.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to quote that line. It says missile defense systems, and then you put in tiny font aircraft carriers, cruise missiles, as well as other tactical assets. It's one of 4 things the evidence lists. Why do you think missile defense is unique?
Well, the reason, so there are other things that could potentially help the alliance, but our argument is that every area of increased military sort of cooperation between the two is important. The reason that missile defense specifically is more important than those is the other ones are, different sort of troops and military presence that we have in the region.
Yeah.
But missile defense is literally intertwined between the two.
And what substantiates that distinguishing between missile defense and the other three things your evidence lists?
Well, that evidence does seem to say, despite listing other things, that missile defense is the most important thing.
Where do you think that it says?
I can find a line for that. It talks about.
Okay, wait. Does the plan change C4 ISR systems?
No, it just.
Okay. Quote: there are still differences in the C4 ISR systems that prevent Japan and SOCO, Japan and US.
So there are issues that prevent the other areas of cooperation from working, but missile defense can reverse causally solve.
Okay, so you need to win that reverse causal that missile defense can overcome those other issues, and you think yours substantiates that. Okay. So second advantage. What Ev says long range is the thing that makes BMD not effective versus effective.
That's our solvency evidence that says there's a bunch of reasons. It's not like the range of it itself. It's that there's a series of issues of it in comparison to the ANSPY6. The first is integration issues. US and South Korea are using the ANSPY6, but using the LRDR provides integration issues, operational delays, and creates a bunch of technical issues. The second is can
I ask a question about that?
Yeah, sure.
Does your F speak to NOCO's perception of those delays?
Leaf, yes, it does. Okay,
so your scenario is because NOCO knows that we're going to delay testing and deployment, they'll strike in the short term.
Well, our argument is that North Korean attack calculations are heavily driven by their perception of the effectiveness of BMD. It's not a short-term signaling argument, but about the literal effectiveness of it post once it's...
Yeah, but the only effectiveness warrant you have is it's delayed operationally. Once it's deployed, why would NOCO strike?
Well, no, it's not just delay. It's like the integration will not work is one of them. And also, it's less effective. And we do test our BMDs. So they can get a decent gauge of the
And as soon as NOCO sees a failed test, they're more likely to strike?
Yeah, I mean, they can get a decent gauge of the percentage accuracy of it, and the better and more effective they are, the more likely it is to prevent a strike. It's like a linear internal link.
We
also have internal links really about intercepting the missiles being important, but yeah.
Oh, 9:30.
All right, I'm sending it.
Hey, MBA, before you send it, can you put that Dropbox email address on there?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is it on the chat?
It's policytoc2020@gmail.com.
Okay.
That's actually already on it.
Yeah, it is on there, yeah.
Okay, my bad. Somebody asked me to get them on the Dropbox, so I assume.
You're fine. All right, it's sent.
Give me a sec. I'm gonna let my cat out. Thanks.
All right. It's gonna be 8 off, then case in the order of the 1AC. Just SOCO advantage, NOCO advantage. Oh, is anyone not good?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay.
First off, new apps are bad. Dex predictable research and structurally favors the app. Disclosure is the locus of education. Our interpretation, you can read a new app, but you have to disclose at 30 minutes before the debate. Next off, substantial reduction must be greater than 2.7% of total arms sales per tell study. Estimated European arms sales in China were not substantial, making only 2.7% of military equipment. The volume of sales remains small according to experts. Estimates violation, only 12 countries account for more than 2.7% of arms sales, and their little radar thing is not one of them. Money issue or limits around the U.S. sells arms in 98 countries, and their interpretation mobilizes every system or service by 98. Our interpretation forces the app to focus on the largest customers or govern arms sales more broadly. Otherwise, it's impossible to be negative. Next off, T. Pearson reduced means sweeping measures that was qualitative or quantitative and limits on weapon exports. It's distinct from restriction. Pearson 88 restriction entails disapproval, banning, or embargoes. Specific states or classes states or types of weapon reduction includes more sweeping measures such as qualitative or quantitative limits or something's vote neg for particular limits. Their interpretation allows the app to spec the country or weapon of the day, which makes neg prep impossible. Next off, critique. The one I see is the demand to respond to anxiety-inducing violence, threats from Trump, global conflict, the environment, etc. Are evidence the failure of the social order to contain the outbreaks of a traumatic real. The plan forecloses the confrontation with our existential anxiety by investing in the fantasy of political efficacy in response to it. That feeds the drives that propel endless wars. Sinclair, 19. Dimension of human to fodder our social realities. We feel powerless. We feel powerless. Choose the concept of integration is probably psychoanalytic extensions to due to a concept of political demands that are impossible to meet. Anxiety direct link to the symbolic order, subjectivity in the face of objects that threatens to destroy it. We are left in the sense we need to be doing something about it. We feast our narcissistic wish to be good. Our sense of overwhelming impotence. Our sense of overwhelming impotence for the just national authority, balance of war, human capacity, or justice falls with the psychic constitution of the civic reflection, how the whole structure, masculinity drive the transformation of the psyche and the cycle of the administration, where the violence is presented as trumpeting the law of reactionary right movement statement, turning forward to end of war to an endless war. Vote negative to endorse absentation as a dialectical kind of measure and habit your anxiety produced by the status quo. The one AC's demand to repair the social order is driven by the imperative to cover up our fear that the world may be irredeemable. Refusing the false choice of the plan or destruction is the only path to authentic change. Edgar 17, assuring the choice in right-wing opposition is valid. The decision needs to be conscious protest. Picture for actual transformation triggers liberal outrage or Trump. Your shares are ungraspable. That any protest turns to student activity. Wants to avoid any activity disguised as doing something impractical. Advice absentation, dialectical countermeasure to fake practice. With fear focusing external objects, anxiety focusing on the function of introspection and love for self-examination, anxiety, phobia, and dread of interparts of fear and says scrutinize that needs to be strive to protect against only entering the polygon fear change and phobia. Misfortune will be remedied, social change may be possible. We need radical self-criticism. Next off, assessment counterpart. The United States Department of State and Defense should work with nonpartisan committees to conduct binding assessments of long-range discrimination radar to Japan that creates customized defense plan, force, risk, and mitigation measures, and takes into account international law and relations. The United States federal government should implement recommendation proposed by the committees and publish the methods and result of the assessment. That counterpart installs the app, avoids allies, and causes the modeling. Mahani 18 risk-based progress is a lot more with reducing consequences and strengthening the North and recommend revitalizing resistance and center arms in defense of analyses of partner capabilities, capacities, weapons, and according to the law to a customized capacity building. Political violence and conflict true system gets the need for mitigation measures. The true rights can possibly get them to determine options that can make it into early to restrict the sale, but in early starting capacity building, they can mitigate conflict with draw the use closer to partners. The U.S. can be the world leader partnering accountable process solves global conflict escalation. Norana 13 commandments, readiness, ability, energy, driven just escalation. Arms trade is of importance to create better mechanism of control, prevent destabilizing, chance for destabilizing misuse its own presence of may worsen the situation. Transparency need of control arms, national laws, global standards are necessary. Next off, Lockheed's growth is strong. Hypersonic R&D is the country's second leg affected by industry profits. Whiteman 18 hypersonic top priority where China and Russia can have used efforts. Lockheed Martin stop facing competition with lion's share commentary. Please load out Lockheed's overcome industry-wide challenges. No other has its maturity hypersonic barter missile operation that is a powerful second leg. F-35 comes for 30% revenue. Company is really not awarding competition and forecast missile F-35 supports the F-22 and F-16. Lockheed's powerful arsenal expect a share to remain in cruise velocity. Arsenals are key funding to some Kaleo and has 14 Lockheed. Let arsenals sales account for 95% revenue. Martin is the largest recipient of contract topic for 19 years. This the company is supposed to change the budget of 2012. The company helped firing thousands to do spending cuts. The funding is critical. Winning the hypersonic race, France nuclear war, Turbag 18 the first while Donnie advances U.S. Leave 5 years until 5 years ago. Principal yield missiles within 5 years. Griffin the use of demonstrators all leave hypersonic. The Chinese don't challenge. They risk our entire forces. Our response to go nuclear. Hypersonic is number one priority. The we will develop means to for the U.S. winning operation. Not sure worth it. Might not be necessary. The likely for contract and new efforts. Arrow and hacks on next off the federal some counterparty National Government Association also informed the White House that because it's the vital economic and national security interest in the United States safe cooperation with federal initiatives, a weak nation upon the United States reducing its foreign military sales of long range discrimination radar. The campaign stalls by forcing federal follow-on and is an aggressive use of uncooperative federalism. Gurgen 17 North power influence national policy and force action at the table. Imminent capacity of the United States. Small the Congress license takes care of policy, immigration, environment, instruction, and drug. This is also uncooperative federalism. States can use leverage to shape policy. Where the party creating some compromise from us instead of compromise, taking out uncooperative role in foreign affairs to create scope for the states to mitigate warming. Galbraith 17 making climate is of our level of states embrace doing so according to foreign legislation. Christ sleeping election action inquiry during Obama working congruent. All this is around the Trump trumping, rollback mitigation. If so, questions around norms, government practice, heavy full condensation, the states can influence policy and foreign affairs, leads to incorporative federalism, uncalled can shape policy interaction, affect distribution, with climate states, shape policy, including push back and federal scheme, and the more state governments has ever negated, the more the U.S. does with to address this problem. Extinction G, 19 climate cause extinction due to landing already casting effects, hot feedback, local vectors, systemic points, abrupt ice sheet cause, kill cause rabbits, sea level rise, the dying forests, increased fires, the oceans, leaves methane producing, runaway, even last warming, can expose population, heat making extinction, likely more important, avoid by trillion times. Next off, Saul, Dems have a larger face war, but are afraid of overstepping. Con, KHN 413, Trump needs another stimulus that gives Dems initial power. The Dems are playing hardball, they many things that Trump wants to. That basically way for Salt, whereby Trump's up to a trade sword for 3 pluses. Almost rejected the appeal, Salt capital, Virginia refunds, supposed by the overall middle class of our economies. It says was affected by Salt, new controversy of the epicenter of the crisis. Relief to deliver taxes. Trump is sympathy for those affected by the company's economic priorities. That could be trade bait, but the plan destroys balance. 18 demonstrates how you control the House to regular weapons. Still, conversation underway would be a veto by the president, initiating expected the lobbies likely to fight against change working with the White House. Salt election necessary for both short-term injection and long-term economic review of this. Kaliber 47 deducted full amount of salt support localities, investment in schools, colleges, healthcare. This is what conservatives limits election defended. Covered with these main cash rates localities. Objective undercut deduction for white activity. Take a couple filing deduction. Confuse taxes to effectively support state services. Take away except for local spending. The taxpayers who have a political call would be less likely to support new class accuracy. They can no longer dug approximately fire to direct them, boost and directing salt both or necessary for the long-term survival of the safety. The only guaranteeing survival of structural features from the global nuclear war, New 18, and the current landscape prolonged crisis, the rising quality of the climate. 08 almost cost them class plus makers and policy combat the stimulus like adrenaline does and these crises showing a economy structural reform, taxes, education. The next crisis, large-scale military confrontation. Case event 1. Stopping offensive arms sales free South Japan, tell much 18 if the US loses will convince you ready for defense budget. I also know why I should convention Alex to just instruments like a more city about arms even with these even with the choice of little impact on capabilities. Alex here for the robust offensive ratio gets indicate we want to fight aggressively. Don't see full application of US power as only good makes all the wars inevitable. 10 or 17 mass versus nuclear war be much greater casualties. Nuclear relation becomes combat. Japanese and Korean nukes encourage reach arms to nuclear weapons. The Middle East, South America, and Africa reach nuclear war with a cash back environmental economic consequence would be manifold. The plan make Chinese aggression more likely. Match 15 China's just result of beliefs result of outcomes for the nation of serious strategy. The only encourage greater risk propagation, broken de-escalation made for the source of stability. Washington miss willingness to escalate. The U.S. need to accept higher risk. They don't solve all of Zoka Japan's views, their cultural and hedge issues. No Sino-Japanese war talents and domestic integration with the U.S. command makes unlikely Japan cannot take opposite. Not endorse the limit as long as Japan's relationship with China is more successful in moving. Countries armed forces the more they accept interference with the more accept interference. Beijing knows who events the Beijing is aware that the crisis escalates. China will face a full alliance. This deters China from using force. Other advantage. No Noko war hang shots. 18 of the Northwest nukes will not use them because of devastating use for some. Noko has never had the capability to be considered. It quickly fell further behind. Cigars sympathize psychological tendencies. These resemble the century to peace in the Korean Peninsula. The civil deterrence force use of like 100,000 true cigars served to manage to care stable. Concerns system have been clear and ambiguous. The weapons are U.S. and preemptive. Preemptive moves the plan forward and the power transition are not applicable. Need to explain why they waited 50 years with finally now there's 1/20th the size of the South. Which will think that plans on EVS to expect the U.S. to go home. But the war in Peninsula cost the U.S. about $60 billion. 3 million casualties far from to the right both because they no Noko EMP. Disparate 17 the EMP there's been unlikely live wire agents have taken basis to improve or destroy wide area use military equipment shield against EMPs whether Kim Jong would take the risk uncertain physically high risk uncertain gains with counter-strike military is hard in other North America even testing of efforts with ensure destruction counterproductive no impact EMPs goal 16 the appearance implies generating enough use is really hard really hard. I'm good for cross eggs.
Okay, just give me 1 sec to set the timer. Oops, sorry. Call attendant in the background. All right. You good?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start on the psychoanalysis, Kay. How do you know that psychoanalysis is true?
Aiden, you want to get this?
Yeah. So first, we'll say falsifiability is a bad standard, obviously, but we know it's true through
obviously
the same way that things are true, empirical evidence. But like the basis of it is the split between the subject and itself. I.e.,
and
a subject
how do you know that?
Based off empirical observations of the world.
Okay. Let's are the counterplans in K conditional, I'd assume?
Yeah.
Okay. And then let's talk about the Lockheed dissad. Why is Lockheed crucial to hypersonics?
They're the only contractor with current active contracts, Arrow and Arrow now because Hacksaw was canceled. Even if Lockheed loses the funding necessary to do hypersonics, we would lose the race because transferring all that ability to another company would take way too much time.
Wait, what evidence says that profits are key to their ability to do hypersonics?
The Whitman card says that the hypersonic budget and the industry budget are under the same thing, meaning that a lack of industry sales means Lockheed does not have the ability to invest money in hypersonics anymore.
Wait,
And
where does it say they won't be able to invest? Where does it say that?
Well, the link card Khalil has says that Lockheed gets 95% of the revenue from sales, and that all R&D is under the same budget. They get the profit Lockheed gets from sales is reinvested into R&D, including hypersonics. We'd argue that Aero would be the thing on the chopping block in the world where they lost the profit, where they have to make budgetary reshuffling.
All right, gotcha. Let's talk about actually just back to the Psycho K. What does the alternative do?
Aiden.
Yeah. So the alternative dwells in the unconscious, but what that means is that instead of having a fixed goal like the AF, like the permutation, it kind of allows us to relate to our libidinal drives, and then after that, orient ourselves to the world. The lack of a fixed telos endpoint is the point of the alternative.
Okay, wait, why does the affirmative have like a fixed telos or endpoint?
Because you've identified insecurity in the world, instability, anxiety, and then you said, here is X thing. We have said that is a narcissistic investment in our political efficacy as subjects.
We didn't say that like the world is irreparably falling apart and the planet's the only thing that can say it. We made like tempered and linear probabilistic claims.
Well, I mean, you did say that extinction is inevitable if we don't stop selling.
We made linear probabilistic claims that says that better BMD makes escalation less likely. It's like, how is this narcissistic?
No, it's not about like, here's this perfect worldview the app has, but you have said, here are threats. We have identified those threats as kind of the traumatic manifestation of the real, not as...
Okay, so your link is that whenever we say that something is bad in the world and promote anything to do something better about it, that's a manifestation of our trauma?
Not anything bad. Our evidence is specific to war. We'll obviously contextualize that to the 1AC.
Okay, so anytime you say that a war is likely, then...
I mean, we'll obviously contextualize that to the 1AC. We've read generic evidence, but we do think that social factors are the driving forces between things like nation states of Japan, and China seeking middle power status within Asia. We think those are social psychoanalytic factors.
All right, we'll take prep.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. We're good, 7:35. Should be sent. Let me know when everyone's good for an order. Are we good for an order? Okay, it's going to be the SOCO advantage, the NOCO advantage, new apps bad, T reduce or subsets or Pearson, T substantial, the critique, the assessments counterplan, the federalism counterplan, the Lockheed Martin disad, and then the politics disad. Does anyone need that again, or am I good to go? Okay.
Sorry. Can I get everything after the K again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. The assessments counterplan.
Yeah.
The federalism counterplan.
Mm-hmm.
The Lockheed Martin disad.
Uh-huh.
And then the politics disad.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
Great. SPY 6 is key to Allied integration, solves territorial disputes and drawing with China and Russia. Independently, Japan SOCO ties are an impact filter circumvention. No durable fiat. NEC would win every time with the F, would lose to inherency, and Trump has no reason to because he's transactional and they wouldn't be making any money. The Japan disad case turns a disad. 1, boosts case security via NOCO and China, which drives their security fears. 2, Japan SOCO disputes harm the alliance structure and highlight U.S. diplomatic failure. BMT interoperability turns the disad. China Avery. 19, analysts the U.S., China, Japan efforts in BMT is the most robust to bilateral co-op. Japan is our strongest BMT partner. The two cooperating closely conducting trade research. Yes, plans to field the SM3 interceptors. The partnership in BMT is a key driver of improvements in allied coordination and the interoperability of the two conduct joint development and testing SM3. The link is likely backwards, but insignificant at best. Trading off with high of radar system in good faith attempts to boost their security when no world convinced Japan to abandon the U.S. alliance. The deterrence turn will concede both cards. They go affirmative. The current structure, deterrence structure against China is wrong. That's why we read offensive realist card in the 1AC. The only thing that if it changes it is the capabilities of BMT. The resolve isn't changed at all because it actually increases decreases the time frame in which it takes to integrate, which boosts deterrence. The NOCO advantage. Ineffective BMT causes NOCO escalation. 3 scenarios. First is nuclear coercion and creates an existential threat that forces South Korea preemption and collapses our credibility, encouraging adversarial proliferation and bad reckoning. Second is first strike. They'll strike Japan, escalate to de-escalate and hold the U.S. homeland hostage. Third is EMP. Single shot strikes can take down the whole power grid, cascades globally and takes out critical infrastructure, which causes societal collapse and turns every impact. Draws in China, Russia, and Japan. Every percentage point of mitigation matters. Yes, NOCO war. Use things like nuclear coercion or EMP attacks, not full out nuclear strike, which is unique. Plus, SOCO preemption is independent. We wouldn't crush them, but we would act if it would draw in China and Russia, which we couldn't crush. Yes, EMP, it's their alternative. They think that they can access U.S. civilian infrastructure, but not anything else. Yes, impact to EMP, if they could get a large blast radius above the United States in just the right spot, which they could do, then they could take out the grid, which would cause splash out in full escalating war. New apps. New apps are good, no res basis, no bright line reciprocity. It's key to ARG innovation, takes coaches out of the Zoom, and theory and incentives create a race to the bottom. Subsets. We meet plain text in a vacuum. If they're right, we institute a qualitative ceiling that those weapons are removed from Japan. We meet curtail Webster's 3. Curtails defining restrict something, counter interrupt, diminish in size, Ingram. 88. Consideration of the plain meanings of basic principle determine the legislative intent. The plain meaning of the word reduced to mean to diminish in size, restrict. Reduction. Levine 12. The ACI has a goal of reducing restricting goods which can be exported, over limiting their interprets functionally whole res. No modern literature supports a ceiling. Other limits check fill in politics conditions, counterpoints, T-subs, and T-arms, or limits explosion inevitable from infinite quantitative apps. Reasonability, competing interests, incentivize goalpost shifting to avoid substance, T-subs. We meet the office 2.3 billion. Warner 18. Japan government selected Lockheed Martin. The deal includes the purchase of 2 Aegis shore radars, which cost about 1.17 million each. The baseline is 55. Meta 18. The State Department put in $55 billion in FMS. We only have to reduce FMS or DCS. That's the res. Psycho. Framework, way the plan versus the status quo or competitive alternative, and if scenario planning is good, deconstructs biases since key to political actualization. Any alternative is unpredictable and infinitely aggressive, which undermines clash. Util is good. Any alternative is tautological and requires saying some lives are more valuable than others, which is a slippery slope. Permutation, do both. Either the alternative can't overcome the status quo or it can overcome the links they link to. They read dissents. If they sever, we can. The thesis of the K is a contradiction. If securitization and psychoanalysis make wars inevitable, then and that's the status quo, then wars are likely and not their theory. No link. We make probabilistic claims to mitigate the risk of humanity being wiped out, not total narcissistic sweeping claims. Psychoanalysis is totally wrong. Terrible methodology. Every reputable claim has been disproven and ineffective results. Blood and budge. 10 over the 30 years, psychoanalysis has been displaced by scientific psychology, but it persists in popular culture. Psychoanalysis is a bogus science. It's protection, scientific research. Psychoanalysis admitted the gap claims however from the first experience did not include first control group did not interchange placebo effects. Their claims remain untested. 110 years psychoanalysis have not set up a single lab in marginality typical of pseudoscience. Their hypotheses are so vague they hard to test. The testable ones have been telling refuted. Psychoanalysis remains stagnant in contest with scientific psychology, which is thriving. The implication of Aiden's cross-ex answers were ridiculous. It means we can never do anything because we can't quite predict exactly what empiricism is the only way to determine what is true and what isn't. Otherwise, we're stuck in a vague form of anti-political action. The vague and utopian alts are a voter, no comparative lit, and creates a shift to the margins and allows the neg to dodge to AC. Offense picks are a voter, steals the entire app, which makes offense impossible. The alt fails, refusing to contribute to some form of knowledge production doesn't solve other sources that produce that thought. They see the political. The assessment's counterplan. Permutation do both. It does the counterplan and guarantees it does the plan. Permutation do the counterplan. Permutation do the process of the counterplan will result in the plan no matter what. Permutation do the plan and conduct a binding assessment. Counterplans that can fiat the plan are illegitimate. Justifies every process. Counterplan that artificially changes political conditions result in the AF, which moves AF ground and discourages case-specific research. They'll say no. Reneging on a deal that as a cash grab would look bad for alliances to them, undermines alliance cred, lets some rando organization make crucial decisions for us. They can't solve the impact. Russia will sell arms transparently, inevitably, and the impact is proven and it doesn't escalate. The FISM counterplan. Permutation do both, shields the link because it's enforcement. Permutation to the plan over the counterplan over arms sales. Federal government says no, they don't trust the states for foreign policy. Undermines our credibility. Japan can't trust working with its states. Nations need to speak with one voice. States can't solve foreign policy. China away is not modeled. No power, economic factors that way, and no spillover. Fed giving in one instance doesn't shift to others. Warming is not anthropogenic, and aerosols solve the impact. NIPCC 13 aerosols have a cloud over the global warming thermal forcing the same magnitude of mankind's production of greenhouse gases. The opposite sign organic solutions evolving from agriculture regions to enhance cloud reference. The results of several empirical studies can include the anthropogenic impetus for cooling may be larger than anticipated. IPCC does not include combined influences recently identified chemical factors which lead to negative cooling. Warming stimulates the creation of aerosols to create clouds which reflect radiation which counters warming. The biological thermostat may be powerful enough to define an upper limit above which the temperature of the earth may be restricted from rising, even though greenhouse gases produce warming satellite data to determine a cooling effect. Negative feedbacks are capable of maintaining the climate within a range of conducing continued life on Earth. Conditionality is a voting issue. Forced untenable offense in the hardest speech while encouraging twin R's on the least covered option at the expense of developing engagement, which this post solves. And fiating other actors in the plan is a voter, and the reason the counterplan isn't an opportunity cost, it allows infinite actors prolif and undermines logic because it's never a real world decision. The Lockheed Martin dissent. Link is minuscule. COVID and sales more broadly thump, and it's the DIVs thumped and profits are in key. 20 workers haul production and F-35 prospects as well as economic impacts to defense companies. Money is likely to keep coming. The real source of disruption statewide shutdowns spelled by distinction among sole suppliers for critical parts. One of the closest, hard to get it started again. Travel restrictions complicate the F-35. It's inevitable. China already has hypersonics and they want them for non-nuclear reasons like Taiwan and SCS conflict. No way that the U.S. can catch up with one company. No impact. Nagapa 15 re-entry vehicles are launched. The re-entry hypersonic speeds are not new. This is not true of existing ballistic missiles. The international community responded with risk and mitigation measures, detection and defense services as deterrence. This approach will be replicated for hypersonic missiles. And the link is minuscule as well. Yeah, actually, politics. Stimulus inevitable, but no addendums. Dennis 413. Congress is under pressure, but no signs of negotiations. Lawmakers still scattering, cutting something done would require unanimous consent with party leaders. Nowhere near agreement. The political party's delay will ramp up once money is gone, and eventual deal disappears. No Congress now. SNBC 413. The House will not go back until May 4th unless cities to pass emergency measures. The lobbying link is backwards. Justin 414. West Point 86. Esperant Pompeo members of the class center as our influential leaders in Congress. Esperant Pompeo are smart. As for a former Raytheon lobbyist came to urge Trump FOPO. The partisanship is high, but doesn't derail parts of the agenda based on mutual interests. Jacobs 36. The market is plunging. 10 treasuries vanishing. Restriction are being imposed. There's one silver lining. Congress is actually working the partisanship for and the hyperpolarized politics of this moment came as members avoided shaking hands. Econ is terminally screwed. Wikipedia 331. Global economy headed for depression. Corporate debt making the situation more precarious. Bulls looking for a V-shaped recovery too. Much lasting damage to the small business and financial sector. Human side stimulus is important. It's just this isn't just that. It's also a supply shock scale. It's bigger than the euro crisis. GDP collapse. Dollar denominated debt for emerging markets soaring and growth falling. It starts stats bill and then shocks and severe. No impact. Clarity 15. The economic stress associated with the conciliatory policy strong on data from 109 to distinct threats. Rivals for choices to terminate their downturns. Control for all explanation space may result from economic troubles. Economic crisis lead to austerity pressures, which inside leadership to search for ways to cut dependence expenditures to encourage strategic reassessment, lead to threat deflation, provoke leads to consider threat prioritization, postpone economic normalcy, increase political and economic benefit for international economic cooperation, leaders seek aid, trade, and investment abroad.
You good? You good?
Yeah.
All right. Reasons to the team were picks, vague alts, process counterplans, and condo. Or am I missing something?
Fiating an actor other than the plan.
Okay. The federalism DA, your warming impact defense is from the NIPCC, which is pretty. Everyone pretty knows that's the oil industry funding the anti-IPCC. Why should we trust your evidence?
It conducts studies.
Well, first, we have like prototypes we can read in the 1AR.
Oh, okay. So
but also like they're a nonpartisan group that intentionally doesn't take money from oil and is trying to fight back against the pro-warming bias.
They're trying to fight back against the pro. Okay, so that's fine. Sure.
So much groupthink.
Okay, a lot of groupthink. The COVID thumper. Where does this card speak to? Lockheed's profits.
It doesn't specifically, but it speaks to the broader economy and how production has been affected, which definitely does affect Lockheed Martin.
Okay, so that's just an extrapolation you're making.
Well, your link
an
evidence, the
obvious
argument you made in
extrapolation.
cross-ex is that the defense profits are interlinked.
About like the intercompany. That's fine. The China thumper. China already has. So how do we know China only wants weapons for non-nuclear reasons?
Well, we know that they want them for more than nuclear reasons, not necessarily only non-nuclear.
What was
the
more than
Talos
nuclear
card
mean?
in the winning like they want them for other purposes, such as gaining military edge in SES conflicts.
Okay, but why is that not destabilized? Why is that defense? Why is that not destabilized?
It's an internal link takeout because it means that China will inevitably develop hypersonics to a rapid degree. At no point can the U.S. ever be able to combat Chinese hypersonic development because they've been doing it for so long and have so many vested
Okay, sure.
interests.
That's just you. Permutation do both on the federalism counterplan.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Jeremy,
So
if you want to take the process.
we do the plan, and then the states pressure the federal government to do the plan. Like
No.
Well, yeah, it'd be the other way
They happen
around,
simultaneously. So what happens is the national government is like, federal government, you have to do this policy and we'll only cooperate with you if you do it. And the federal government does that policy. So we cooperate with the states.
Oh, so the states do it first, or they do it?
No. It happens simultaneously. But
Okay,
the federal government. But then
how is the federal government acting in response to the
here's the
states
important
doing it
distinction, right? The federal government has to announce when it approves sales, but it doesn't have to announce when it cancels sales.
So it's like a normal means argument.
Yeah, it'll look to everyone in the world like the federal
okay.
government is enforcing and complying with the mandate.
What Ev do you think you have that substantiates this delayed announcement argument?
We haven't read Ev on it.
Okay, so that's just you. I guess Japan can't trust working with the states. Why can't they trust the counterplan if the federal government ends up doing the same thing?
Just in terms of foreign
like
policy,
why does it matter? Why does it matter where it starts with the states or not?
So that argument's not about solving our AF. That argument's about broader foreign policy credibility.
Yeah, and in terms of Japan, having their foreign policy with the United States being dictated by states with private and vested interests and stuff, that probably looks pretty bad.
All right, thank you.
How much do y'all have? Like 930?
930, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Henry, what's the SOCO preemption strike thing on case? Like it's distinct, you said?
Yeah, that's when SOCO doesn't feel assured from BMD. They're more likely to first strike NOCO instead of defending.
Sorry, so it's SOCO will first strike because they don't think BMD is
Yeah. If
accurate.
they feel like they don't have effective defense, then they're more likely to use offense.
And you think you have that speaks to SOCO's perception of LDR, not just
Yeah,
NOCO.
our solvency evidence.
And
About
wait,
integration.
the only internal link card for this advantage
I'm
is
not going to
leaf,
answer
right?
like cross-ex questions with like you drilling us about evidence. I'll tell you which evidence.
Okay.
But like,
Is it? It's just leaf, right? So,
Leaf is the one that speaks to SOCO perception, and then and then also the Kelly one. But yeah, and our broader solvency evidence about why integration is key.
okay. 555.
Where were we at?
Sorry?
Where were we at?
Oh, 555. Is everybody good for an order? It's first the state's counterplan, the assessment's counterplan, critique.
I threw the prep in the chat. I don't know if anybody cares. But
Appreciate it. Did you put our? Oh, yeah. Thanks. So states, assessments, critique, first advantage, second advantage. Anybody need that again? Is anybody hot ready? Okay. The count plan solves the case by spurring federal follow-on. The government will enact a plan in response to massive state pressure results in identical outcome, but through an alternate process that allows state governments to break the cooperative model, which hamstrings climate response. The first argument is permutation both. There's no evidence to substantiate this delay thing. Obviously, it's key for a link round for the act to be immediately announced. If they read it, we get new answers. It doesn't solve. It's cooperative, not conflictual. There must be a break where states refuse the Fed to create a space. The perm removes that conflict, which is key. Land or tenor confidence in this. States actually refuse hurdle states that serve as rivals or allies, and the permanent case for challenges, recognize the value of friction, and join cooperative by contrast of visions, working together, dialogue, accountability for conversation on cooperative, first on both always sparking beneficial resistance, but if states
should decline little ranks, world states party, objection of peace. Second is public image will be compliance and cooperation, not strong alliance partner. 18 defines the refusal to accept power by central government is usual to repeat that strong kids of open refusal by taking more elaborate from the steps we do not open refusal by cold demand, public appearance of completes, then cooperation dislike policy. The next term is intrinsic, obviously it's functionally, which permits them to be both textually and functionally non-intrinsic. It's a slippery slope to allow any attorney's benefits that the African fiat interest hold on to benefit. The 2AC did not have a defense of this permutation, so obviously I get new 1AR answers if they say it's good. In the 1AR, they say no. Our evidence is more specific. The Cabinet has a National Government Association, which represents all 50 states. The man, the White House enact the plan solves for 2 reasons. First, it demonstrates massive and historically unprecedented support for the plan, which literally every state crying out will be heard in Washington. 2, the feds have to listen because they need the states to implement mandates in more important areas like immigration, drugs, infrastructure. The Cabinet explicitly conditions cooperation on federal agreement. That's the Gherkin evidence. Overwhelming pressure forces Trump's hand. Gherkin, 17 federalism, powerful weapon. The Congress depends on states to implement immigration, drug, carry out healthcare, create opportunity for property, federalism, states level, influence policy, forces on agenda, deepening your opposition, cause for research, PC, but want to play elsewhere. Republicans be forced to compromise. It's especially true in armed sales. But for 19, that affects all tough law, come with the kind of cigarette taxes, with decreased use of global initiative for environmental causes. Good examples: carbon emissions, which several states have experimented with, destruction tax benefits, global arms sales decrease, the price increase would have an effect on demand. The resulting price increase would affect demand only from the parties to international transition, also flow through the local resource smuggling, distribution, overs all the way down to the warring parties. They say it undermines cred. Well, obviously, once it's enacted, it's durable fiat means it's sustained and it will be implemented. There might be some uncertainty in the interim, but there's no some steps at once there's compliance. Even then, multiple voices are inevitable, but they have no impact. We're the only ones with the ebb on this question. Glenn in 16, U.S. doesn't always speak with one voice. It has made little sense. Guarantees a matter of design. The United States speak with one voice. Constitution divides among branches. Congress and the judiciary speak historically. The sealed number of conflicts. The nation consists of different ethnicities, religion, politics. 4 years know that it's worth your conflict. History, mass and safe. Few suggested away from century must walk in. Episodes of colonies have to be traced to but situation less frequently than they did in early days. They say I can't solve FOMO. That was above. They say no spillover. It does spill over. It's an aggressive assertion of uncooperative federalism because it has to say it's uniformly break with the Fed and demand policy change. It's unique because cooperation is foreign affairs, a rare place for open disagreement by states. That's critical for warming, given the necessity of international linkages. That's Gherkin. It creates a feedback loop. 2017 disrupted federalism creates a feedback loop which states resist federal authority. Guide interpretation. Some righteous case benefits have not been fully appreciated. Demonstration effect proved. 10 and 11 states contribute to a better understanding of the range of opportunities where better supply chain challenges play a role in this traditional mechanism by which states advance interest. They can see that if states were to do it, it solves warming. If we win that warming, it's anthropogenic. So it's only a question of spillover. They say first they say the impact defense warming causes extinction. It's non-linear, cascading, and multiplicative. Their doesn't account for a combination of host environmental effects, overall resiliency, and cross tipping points that cause extinction. That's the G evidence. It is anthropogenic. Good to 19. Do we forget measures called focus instead of social adaptation? No despair, long and science. And the means simply for closely likely to stay within a target. We have to do our action will determine how much we'll hurt. It's not too late. Will be for decades. Clean energy, hold warming to low end 2 degrees will be much better. Every depth of matters argues that will pass point and no return is just wrong. And no scientific consensus ran away. This and will be triggered by 2 degrees. That's too late. Falls apart. Warming outweighs diminishing. Answers SO2. That's where I understand aerosols can have a heating effect on global climate. This is mean to driver cars. No, because offset that aerosols make all other tech to be smaller than the impact which makes on global warming. Aerosols slow the process, but do not stop it. SO2 only helps North America, not the world. Very 93 aerosol flight on global warming. The greenhouse gas works as fast and covers global sulfate trouble only a few hundred miles south of hemisphere gets no protection. Market no protection. It's an oil hack running for the industry. Obviously, there's incentive to cover up. Condo is obviously a joke with the new app. It's an RBI for block skew. We should it turns for education arguments because it's less time to engage with the app. It should be allowed in this instance because there's no other way to test the app. Cross-apply that to their states theory. It's good. The actors, the NGA, which is a singular body that represents all governors. If they link, so to say, generic complaints don't apply. It does not mirror the plan. It uses state leverage to change federal policy. The only standard in the 2AC was that it's not real world. The judge is an analyst, not the federal government. Only real world interpretation, which is key to education, that avoids intransigence, which kills fairness by excluding all dissents. If they're right, vote neg on presumption because no single actor within government has the sole authority to enact the plan. Assessments. Concede permutation. The 2AC theory interp here was counterplans that could fiat the plan. That is not the state's counterplan. If they classify this again, new answers. But the state's counterplan is educational. Here in 11, U.S. provides governance opportunity to shape policies and key player crucial. Distant point political scientists, researchers, and decades help push forward understanding, but a little dedicated to ways governors influence policy outside their home state. Seem to point weakness, literature by ignoring research that fail capture important aspects of the federal policy. The counterplan does not fiat the plan. It just recommends it or pressures it, which is not the 2AC interp. The critique. All these are reason to reject the argument, not the team. Cross applications or new contextualization of warrants that I get new answers to. They're right about falsibility. Concede the firm. South Korea. We didn't read the circumvention argument, but we did read the MPAC-D. That was flat drop. The 1NC Tonneson evidence says that Japan will inevitably be constrained because they just rely on the United States too much, so they'll never risk a war. It also speaks to Chinese perceptions and say that they know they couldn't risk a war because it would mean confronting the whole of the United States alliance structure, so they'll inevitably black down. I'm not reading more ebb on this because the 2AC flat dropped it. The internal link ebb is actually, I'll answer straight turns first. First is Japan DA. They have no ebb that proliferation is happening now. It's not external. Reread as a case turn. The link turn is not a link turn. It just has BMD's cooperation now. They said that the app is insignificant and the
the grand scheme of the alliance, which we'll concede. The resolve argument, again, it wasn't an external offense, so it's not unique offense. It was just an internal link term. But Masto is certainly not offense for them. It says de-escalatory measures invite aggression, and they have to win that BMD causes escalation anyways. And even then, they drop the impact D. The internal link is not good. They set the bar in 1AC cross-checks that they need reverse causal F. That missile defense is the key issue that not only improves relations but solves other issues. Not only does their F not meet that bar, but it says other issues actively matter. Here's their F. Other capabilities. Yamaguchi 18. Further challenges may also be encounters alliance defense coverage and cyberspace, aerospace, for instance, indigenous nuclear armaments, plus hardware such as accurate counters, cruise missile, other tactical assets, however, enhancing the alliance capability more about issuing the JSTF rather than the alliance itself. Trilateral cooperation may difficult while keys development balance international security, economic hindrance, and ability impact relation with the US and China. At the same time, concerns whether momentum of their partial trilateral security cooperation be sustained, particularly in allied domestic political treaties, often relation between Japan and ARCO. Trade thumps. 1AC Tong Hyung 19. The agreement with Japan said the decision to buy more time to settle the trade dispute. Curious, they will continue the military agreement. Japan is resource of trade has needs some big country was ready to budget. It's unclear whether Japan will make concession trade unless the countries find a way to settle disputes over South Korean core rules that Japanese company must prove reparations. Took years to the United States first by South Korea and assigned GMSO. The next evidence says relations have never been worse because of the inability to do things like join the fleet review. I'll read into 2 and R if they go for this. The other advantage. The other stuff turns disadvantage because it means that there's inevitably a rift, which should show weakness. They only have one card that says integration is key in the context of the app. They have no ad that Noko will strike based off that perception. They're taking this whole advantage of this leaf card that has like 3 lines that says that it displays operational capacity, but no ad that connects that to North Korea strike. Even the tiniest threat of nuclear retail solves. As Kim and Park 19, Pyongyang needs to believe U.S. to attack for an extended deterrence remain credible. The credibility deterrence issues U.S. further within the U.S. arcade alliance that the EDC was regularized. Even then, there's no impact. One, empirics proof crisis in the 90s, in the early 2000s, all ended in de-escalation and detente, even though Noko had an advantage. They're far weaker now. 2, self-interest. Neither side wants to get involved in bloody and drawn-out conflict. Means there's a mutual incentive for restraint. 3, no draw, and that answers the 2AC war. Neither Russia nor China wants to fight the U.S. They're close to borders. 4 is that we would destroy them. The U.S. military is the best in the world, and Noko knows it. Their only answer is that we wouldn't destroy Russia and China, but even then, Noko would never start conflict in the first place because they're not certain that Russia and China will get involved. Even then, Russia and China won't get involved. Blame 18. The U.S. cannot accept anything less than permanent denuclearization. The DPR give the PRC Russia to attempt to block denuclearization, or certainly about a strong ally response. Limited war way would result in immediate cutoff of both Russia and China from access, parking, freezing assets, looking them out. Financial systems running up by enemy operating such a move immediately causing economic depression. Russia and China, they have no ev that Soko will just go ham and strike Noko. What? Obviously, they're not willing to jeopardize their whole line structures. There's no impact to EMB. The goal evidence says 1, there's not enough juice. An EMP with enough power to pose a threat requires the power of nuclear bombs. 2, there's not enough returns. EMPs are untested, expensive, and it's not even certain that they'd be effective. Second strike solves. That's counting and Shaw 18. The second, this is for the impact proper. South Korea government is probably like to escalate. Both sides are very careful. Neither side wishes to provoke war. On the destruction would bring U.S. ones a great risk to amateur relation around the region. A war could spill over and above Japan, China, Russia. The United States worst case scenario is horrifying. North Korea would not use weapons for offensive purposes. North Korea is not engaged in terrorism because their goal is not random wanton destruction, but survival. To actually use nuclear weapons.
You good for cross? You kind of brush off a lot of these perms as intrinsic. What's the model for competition in a world where you only evaluate functionality?
Wait. What do you mean a lot of these perms? You mean the one intrinsic perm you made?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I brushed up the one perm, but because you didn't have a justification for it, I think it's pretty reasonable. The model of competition is that if you're right, like obviously the theoretical justification for this permutation is that it checks non-germane counterplans, right? But if you're right about that, there's reciprocal offense under the app, because if it is not germane, you should have germane literature that could easily beat the counterplan.
What does it mean to have germane literature in a world where there are infinite things that are, potentially?
Again, you don't need literature about all those things. You just need literature about one
if
thing,
you don't
which is
need
to say the plan. But you don't meet that burden because you haven't, like, you could research, defenses of the plan, which, if you're right, there's the infinite, generic, terrible process counterplans. One piece of ed that is good about the plan's mechanism should be able to slay them if your impact articulation, which I assume will be in the 1AR.
What about the resolution mandates that the affirmative specifies a mechanism other than the United States?
Sorry?
What about the resolution mandates that the affirmative defends something other than the USFG?
Like, are you talking about
yeah.
Wait, are you talking about the context of like the plan being able to be?
No, in the context of the affirmative being forced to defend their mechanism in the way that you've described. What about the resolution?
United States federal government? I mean, I can read the definition of that in the 2R. Other than that, like the United States federal government, the first 5 words or whatever, like that's pretty big, and it's as well shows that is the affirmative.
Okay, I think we're like not on the same page here, but that's okay.
I mean, to be fair, like we had a topic that was like United States, right? And there's a reason that
No. You're just totally. It's fine. The South Korea advantage. You make this claim about like Japan, backing down in a way. What about South Korea Japan conflict? Would mean that Japan would start the nuclear level of this. Your evidence seems to speak in the context of like a broad war, but why wouldn't they still have incentive to start territorial disputes if it has to do with
So
sovereignty?
again, one is our evidence says China doesn't get drawn into those disputes. Two is that because both Japan and South Korea are part of the alliance structure, there's an overwhelming incentive to
Sure,
like. Is
but
your
doesn't that
scenario
beg
really?
doesn't that beg the question of the alliance structure in itself, though? Because your card literally says because of military integration, it provides political cover for them to be able to go. And
I don't know about that. I think they're much
more.
more.
I think
I mean,
it is
like
what it says.
Yeah, but like I think I don't know if you're actually quoting it, but I think there are much broader incentives for Japan to not just start a war with South Korea. Besides
Your evidence
LDSR,
says,
like
your
obviously
evidence
there's
says that
economics.
they're part of the alliance structure, which provides cover for them to be able to do things like de-escalate the territorial disputes.
First
why
of
is
all, you haven't read an internal link to overall alliance collapse. As of the 1AC, you said, and Jeremy said there are two internal links, BMD key to co-op between the two countries, not U.S.-Japan relations. Even
no.
external
I'm only talking about SOCO. I'm only talking about SOCO Japan, but that's fine.
I'm sending it. I probably sent way more cards I'm going to read, so if y'all need a marked copy afterwards, I will definitely give that to you. Politics, then Lockheed. All right. Is everyone good? Good? Cool. Politics can see their impact even takes out the link term. There's no offense. Lucky. The 2AC was really problematic because they never had a single card about Lockheed Martin specifically. Our whole argument is that this is not the normal DIB. This had adversarial lead in hypersonics versus nuclear war. It can single-handedly hold American forces hostage, destabilizing every single forward deployment in the world. American defense industry lead is coming and more peaceful by creating countermeasures that delink it and from warheads, which solves their inevitability argument because Lockheed can develop the ability to take down Chinese warheads. It turns case China and Russia will bid off hypersonics the countries the U.S. cuts off, destabilize the region, and the rest of our diplomatic options in Asia. Henderson 19 star hypersonics that has adversaries made difficult for the U.S. to respond to diplomatic leverage special warheads for detection, travel quickly, inducing confusion, life effects, or make nuclear use without risk of employing nukes. The 2AC made 3 arguments in the line by line, all incredibly generic. Hold the line on one air responses or spin because we based our entire block strategy on the 2AC mistake, and it was a new affirmative. They say sales broadly. Arms sales are vital to Lockheed's business model. They're 95% of all revenue and it forces trade-offs like 2012. Even if the plan is somewhat small, it still demands internal trade-offs. That's Leo. I'm going to explicitly concede the Warner evidence. They ran on T substantial case. A link to the DA. The plan reduces $2.3 billion of Lockheed profits when the entire hypersonic budget is $2 billion. They definitely trade off. I'll insert the card for reference. And the sales key to all future profits. Larger 18 Lockheed on scales to deliver long-range discrimination radar technology going to LDRs. Opening up numerous business for Lockheed radar. For Japan's each Lockheed can secure the contract. Maybe 2 more contracts down the line. Like it's committing over contract up to 4.1 billion. It trades off with hypersonics. We're down to 1 prototyping efforts. The budget's tied. Probably 20 hypersonics down size. Militaries that do abandon this prototype program. Air Force will cancel hacksaw the ship resource. The Arrow or by Lockheed the budget. Air Force downside to the 1 prototyping. Arrows on track. The most prudent use of dollars hacksaw. Excited hypersonics in the future. Estimated cost 928 billion. The COVID thumper Lockheed is special. Production has continued, especially when they've not written evidence about Lockheed specifically. That's Thompson 20. Lockheed will deliver its contract to other industry. Lockheed Martin's team to recruit talent. Unusual position because they give us their customer. They're more slated of fewer uncertainties. Defense can use even as other sectors fault. Their public orders insulated from market volatility. Pay 20. According to 1 to name volatility, but Lockheed is a playable market. While swings insulated from volatility, doesn't supply worries and advanced out of bull cases. State department contractor with China and Russia. Everything will be funneled to Lockheed supply chains reopen. Weisenberger 20. Both plants are up and running.
after being shutdowns there has been no impact on supply. Is too early to predict by benefit defense companies Fridman car and 20 whiplash and benefits some industries because demand growth effects may take more time to manifest, especially for defense industry. It's too early to accurately predict when the industry will grow unaffected. At worst, this is a brink argument. While people start the automation and drone delivery, Fridman car 20 defense industry must is what risk planning strategy includes voice planning automation and advanced delivery can reduce downtime during shots coincidentally these segments. Those companies have strong capabilities. Strong capabilities and Lockheed Martin is profiting despite coronavirus. Whitman 20 companies plans to deliver F-35 in 2020 with months affected by the shutdowns. Not seeing any sign of the arrival and by deliveries F-35 remains lower production, but Lockheed hopes to ramp up deliveries in the years to come. They say it's inevitable, even if it's not nuclear with China. Conventional strike missiles are destabilizing per the TOC evidence, and it causes preemptive war and security dilemmas. It's not inevitable. The Twitzy just made this up. Lockheed's driving hypersonics to maturity, but other companies still have a sizable lead in direct application. Funding is key to flight tests. America can't show up. We're still ahead in inline TOC 18. You can confirm having to win the race. If a single breakthrough that would be seminal, we own the intellectual leadership and United States in parity. I want to see the race of it. The surprise and take the initiatives. U.S. developing hypersonics through Lockheed. Actually, I must give that card. And our weapons have better applicability. Acts 19. The U.S. system was like the result of widespread deployment of a truly the transformational weapon. There's nice flying magnets advantages. Russia focused on the rest of marginally useful weapons. China's very advanced tech might improve and practical. America focused on weapons to deploy while deferring more ambitious designs. U.S. is behind, but we're a different race. Usefulness and scalability. America is major advantages. Russia and China appear to have ahead, but the U.S. will have in the weapon that can actually use good get the advantage. Lockheed can help the U.S. catch up. Davenport, 18 China Russia surpassing the process of losing made development top priority given only called defense contractors to move more quickly. The Air Force announced 1 billion to 1 billion Lockheed references here combine hypersonics to the top priority. They say no impact. The card's normative, not descriptive. The bottom of the card read it says we need hypersonic defenses, not that we have it. Lockheed is key to that defense, the ability to defeat missiles and stabilize deterrence. It collapses deterrence. There's no norms or control and causes accidents. Nothing checks. Smith 19 hypersonics to avoid accidental conflict, especially during crisis. There are no agreements to Russia. Push the new arms race one up in the north and deterrence and new Cold War tensions. The vessel rating for time and creates useless pressure to Russia first missiles up in MAD. The battle the global altering wars we turn to become as about certain response. Even if they're right, it's the same thing as ballistic missiles. The perception of that is not the perception of that is not the same. The knowledge of fast strike times means that launch on warnings more likely and miscalculation is never. It causes global nuclear war. Spire 17. The hypersonic reduced response times to 6 minutes. So the TCRSV WMD's countermeasures to be destabilizing revolution and CNC versus accidental war. Strategic forces me more dispersed race to capture LOW increase sensibility preemption. Guaranteed destructive action. Powers plus with hypersonic CDs as a deterrent and feel pursue disbalancing agenda to upgrade instability to Iran, Israel, no Japan. They evolved to include major powers opposite with the U.S. as Europe, Russia, and China create a new path escalation. Even if they try to make the argument that BMD solves the hypersonics or EVA BMD, which is everything I said above, each scenario goes global. It's most probable and implodes every arms control. That's a original 13 missiles, difficult attack carrying new warheads are spreading, a complicated arms control, a risk catastrophic conflict, a durable big uncertainty, trigger and nuclear, a response to warring time means escalation to if used weapons can open for doors, moving limit nuclear war. Limit nuclear war is a contradiction. Vulnerability. Do you want to read this in? No? Okay. I'm gonna read another card on the actually. I don't have time. So.
All right, 5:45 prep. We're starting.
I think you
Here we
have
know
more,
it's
I think
7:30.
you have more than you have 7:30. That's our prep.
Oh, I mixed up our two preps. My bad. 7:30 starting now.
And you'll need a marked copy of that, the stuff I didn't read. You're on mute.
Do y'all want a marked copy?
Yeah, like the stuff I can delete the stuff I didn't read if that makes it easier.
Sorry.
Jeremy, you're muted.
We can stop your prep if you want, so we can send out a marked copy.
I'll just send it.
End prep. I was at 5:24. Ending the call. I'm sending it out. All right. Give me a heads up and people will get it. I'll give the order.
Is anybody else getting background noise?
That's my desk raising.
Oh god.
Also, I don't think Nina's back, Jeremy, so you might want to look for a little.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, it's going to be NOCO, SOCO, States, DISAD. And Henry, if I forget the condo RVI, remind me.
I'm gonna ignore that.
All right. Is everyone good?
Nope, give me a second.
Nope. All right. All right. Everyone good? Awesome. Totally dropped impact scenario, NOCO, nuclear coercion. BMD is critical to defend against it both, to have the effective capabilities to deter them from starting it, and so that the U.S. can maintain a hardline response against it. They've dropped it, collapses global assurances, make the U.S. looks weak, causes prolem, bandwagging, and the impact will also be SOCO preemption because they perceive it as an existential threat. So they'll strike NOCO, and the U.S. will support them because we're losing to North Korea. We'll line by line. They say we only have one card better than zero, plus we had multiple that impact out the warrants. They're huge. First is integration. They've conceded it's impossible with this sale because the Japan's capabilities can't combine with U.S. and South Korea's. They've dropped all the impacts of that. It's key to shoot, look, shoots, key to radars, key to early detection, key to discrimination of decoys. All of those are key and dropped. Second, they've dropped that there's no testing for it. It's completely untested versus the other radar systems. That's crucial because BM testing leads to massive improvements and it's extremely expensive and tests are rare. The next argument is that nuke retail solves. First, nuke retail doesn't solve nuclear coercion. Second, we read a bunch of evidence that says that the nuclear umbrella is not sufficient because it's not credible. North Korea doesn't think that we'll actually risk the homeland and nuclear strike them just to defend our allies. Plus, it forces us to rely on nuclear strikes, which are more escalatory. They say that NOCO is weak. Our impact still triggers because we have things broader based on both the drawn from China and Russia because they have regional impact and from the nuclear usage alone, which they've conceded. They say there's mutual incentive for restraint. That doesn't matter if there's an existential threat to either of the countries, and they've conceded that NOCO is revisionist, wants to expand and wants to take up U.S. hegemony, which is a conceded argument. They say that other BMD solves. We might have other BMD, but that BMD won't work or be effective without radar or integration to be able to defeat the decoys, which was all of our integration key evidence that they dropped, and it will be less effective. The SOCO one strike was answered on top. They say EMPs don't work, not going for EMPs. SOCO, concede, we don't have an internal link to this, no impact, whatever, no offense. States. First is the perm that they call it intrinsic, but most certainly is not. It perm does the counterplan, the plan and the counterplan over arm cells broadly. We inserted the tech. It's in the 2NC document. It solves the net benefit because it's just they don't have any internally specific to LRDR, just arm cells broadly. So it's only a question of competition. First, it is not intrinsic. It is not textually intrinsic because it uses less words than the counterplan. And second is it's not functionally intrinsic because it just instead of fiating the specific area over which it does arm cells, it just fiats it over its arm cells generally, which is less area specificity and less things that would be required in the bill, which means it has a lower function. If there's any doubt in your mind, you should defer affirmative on this. Also, counterplans have to be functionally and textually competitive. That solves their offense because we can't add extraneous portions, but it also is key to, but they link to all of ours because they allow infinite artificial counterplan. It is so fucking easy if you allow functional competition and their model to create infinite artificial conditional disads that even if their counterplan is predictable, they won't be, and they can have infinite fiated in disads that the F can never meaningfully prepare for, destroys fairness and class because it disincentivizes case-specific research and top topic-specific disadd. New apps can't save them because this isn't a theory argument. It's about a model of competition. The theory as well, they answer the wrong theory argument. It's not about multi-state, but about other actors in the plan. There's two impacts. First, it's predictability. It means they can use any actor in the world, which is impossible to answer. Second is logic, which is the far more important one, which is that nobody has a choice between the decision between the US and the state or something like that, which creates a false choice. The big impact is both that it's illogical, a false comparison that decimates any comparison education, but the other one is that you should just reject the counterplan external to theory because it's not an opportunity cost to the plan in a way similar to a permutation. The analyst is an unwarranted buzzword. The analyst is analyzing a bad thing if they're not true opportunity costs, and new apps doesn't save them because the argument is premised on logic, not fairness. This ad. Oh, condo's not an RBI. That's silly. Times 2 applies each way, not an impact to it. This ad. First, there's no impact. It's stupid. Their internal link is about hypersonics from the US being stronger, but their impacts to it are all about why Chinese hypersonics is bad. We all agree those are broadly inevitable, and there's no reason why US having better hypersonics is key to check back at those. There's also no impact. Hypersonics are no better than ballistic missiles. All of their evidence is unqualified spin for why they might look scary, but nobody's actually going to start a war over them because they have the similar capabilities. We also, the thesis of the case takes it out because it says that nuclear superiority is because BMD is able to solve all the nuclear superiority warrants. They also the turns case, the impact defense takes it out, but it doesn't apply to NOCO or a specific link, so it can't turn our stuff. Plus, the app definitely solves. They've also dropped collapse, so the economy is inevitable on the other flow, which definitely takes it out because Lockheed Martin will collapse inevitably. We've also inserted their card in the doc. This is that it's just not a thing. It says that the U.S. Army awarded a contract, which means that the federal government is the one paying them $2.5 billion to fund all of it, which is more than they need. Well, willing to give them that the link is $4 billion, but even if they were right about profit, that is fucking nothing for Lockheed Martin. They have trillions of dollars. They have so much money. It's not going to sap it. They have zero evidence that if they lose money, that hypersonics is going to be the first thing to go, given that it's such a political priority for the U.S. for national security. If it was going to go by the wayside, we just do a bailout and save them. There's zero way that they actually would trade off or not develop those. They say Lockheed special are thumpers. Like, we're not going for all the thumper arguments, just the inevitability link stuff. Pen, anything else you need me to say? Nope. All right, cool.
How much prep do we have?
I think
Put
545.
it in the doc.
Yeah.
Yeah, or in the chat.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so that would be good for order.
Yeah.
States. And NOCO.
States and sorry, you went out for a sec. Could you do the order one more time?
Oh, sorry. Lockheed, States, NOCO.
Lucky States, NOCO. Okay.
And their cars I'm sending.
Sorry, then let me pull those up.
Oh, sorry. And there's two more. I'll just send those in probably. Let me know when y'all those pull up.
Yeah. So there are two different docs.
Yeah, I can. Sorry, I'll just.
No, I can compile them.
Nah, yeah, okay. If you're fine with that, sorry about that. There's one in the body and one I sent up. Sorry about that.
Okay, so one in the doc, one in the, or two in the doc, one in the body.
Yeah, I mean there's two cards in both, but there's a doc and a body.
2 cards in the doc, 2 cards in the body. Gotcha.
Okay. Is anybody not ready?
Let me just mute myself, but yeah.
High risk of a disadvantage outweighs the mitigate case. 2 framing issues. First, the 1A on the dissent is all span and new. If you can't draw a line from the tree, see the 1A or scratch all the 1A arguments. 2, there's no evidence. We're outcutting them like 7 to 1. So default to good contextualized evidence instead of Jeremy's assertion. The impact will be proper. Lack of use leadership makes nuclear war inevitable because of hypersonics and destabilizes forward deployment. It means mutually assured destruction is inevitably undermined. But U.S. leadership corrects this problem because it means we don't have to resort to preemption. It means other countries don't think they can get away with aggression. It turns the case. First is makes coercion inevitable on a much broader scale than North Korea because other countries can undermine our deterrence. Second is North Korea destabilizes the whole region. We've read evidence. It causes arms which is definitely in praise. North Korea makes them more likely to be aggressive in the interim. The first argument is no impact. We've read 7 cards here. It's too blippy. Even if they aren't a new capability, countries think they are, which means they adopt lots of warning and miscalculation is more likely. Even then, leadership solved because the question whether countries think they can preempt our adversaries. American power hinges on the hypersonic question. That's Henderson. 19 episodes can remain impossible to solve the physics threat of national security. Might be other spend the weather risk to track use of fuel immediate across national power preemption diplomacy vulnerability of activities industrial base. But Lockheed getting the contracts and solving those solves because it's about defensive countermeasures, which locks down mutually assured destructions. It means that it's tit for tat rather than asymmetric capabilities that incentivize preemption in the short term. They say turns case. It was a warrantless assertion. We've read evidence that it destabilizes the region and causes diplomatic rifts, which definitely implicates the ability for alliances to project coherence. The AF collapses economy, or the economy collapse inevitable was a blip. We read 7 cards that Lockheed's distinct their continuing production, and they're able to insulate themselves from COVID broadly, which means that this doesn't take it out. Their only card about no impact to hypersonics broadly says we need countermeasures, which proves it's a question of defense and U.S. getting a lead. But those are getting status quo funding now, or those are getting those won't be produced without Lockheed. The link debate, I'll do that. That will prove that. The plan trades off with hypersonics. Kaleo says Lockheed R&D is all under one budget, bolstered by sales. A lock of $2 to $4 billion to profits mean Lockheed operates at a loss, which forces budget trade-offs that take hypersonic development. And they say no trade-off. This is a new argument, which means that I get new answers. At the very least, you should scratch it because it wasn't the Tracy. This is smoke and mirrors. Even if the federal government has given Lockheed money to develop, our evidence is much more specific and says Lockheed always supplements the necessary federal funds with discretionary spending. That has become impossible in a world without a $2 billion contract and the loss of future contracts. That Larder was a conceded link. Says what happened. Empirics proved due to budget and constraint pressure, the Fed already canceled another hypersonic prototype, and the last one is on the brink. If Lockheed can't supplement with funding from sales, that contract gets canceled, which answers they're on the funding on the chopping block. That's the Pollock evidence. There's no evidence to substantiate bailout. Lockheed won't collapse. There's no incentive for the Fed to give them money. We never read Crane. Yes, trade-off. It's all under one budget. Houston 18, and we conduct already use our funds in our countries where the customers develop technology. R&D includes cost of research concepts, studies, development, and testing. Companies R&D costs charge the cost of sale total $1.3 billion, including with arms sales. That's Houston 18. International subsidies, combination of US international manufacturing. Government provides subsidies. Competitors focusing on increasing international sales remain competitive. We must remain relationships. Remember, the only card they have on this is the card we didn't read. They can't just insert that. Even then, we've read evidence that says the plan is key to future sales, which is R&D that would have been invested in Lockheed. That's no good match. Jeremy, based on this nuclear coercion stuff, but remember they're interlinked to it. It's NOCO confidence, i.e. NOCO thinking they can push our hand. 2 arguments. First is they conceded that all of the thumps on the other arguments, thumps assurances, because it shows there's inevitably a rift in U.S. alliance structure. I said that in the 2NC, and if the brink is just collapsing assurances, that's definitely not unique because Japan and SOCO are fighting now, which should cause NOCO preemption. That was in the 2NC. The 1A doesn't answer that. 2 is that if we prove that NOCO is not confident now, it answers nuclear coercion because there's no way that they would risk regime survival to test the hand of the greatest superpower on Earth.
Earth, and they know it. A few arguments here. First is the 2NC Peck evidence, Park and Kim evidence says that it's not a question of the ticky-tacky operational BMDs. It's a question of overall things like forward deployed troops, U.S. President the reason, pivot to Asia, which answers all of their integration and testing argument. They're relying on one piece of evidence, the Leaf evidence, that does say, to be fair, it's untested and that there's some operational problems, but then they have no evidence that that is sufficient to make NOCO willing to risk their hand with nuclear coercion. They need evidence that connects LDSR to that nuclear coercion. Otherwise, they're just piecing together a Frankenstein evidence, and there's no evidence they have that says this operational deficiency rises to the level of complete failure of integration that their evidence assumes. Second is that NOCO knows it will get destroyed by the United States. One, empirics. They can see North Korea was broader, it was bigger and more powerful than the United States in the 90s and the 2000s. Why didn't they nuclear coerce us now? There's no reason the SPO is unique. Second is that even if they're revisionists, and even if they're revisionists, Kim is a rational actor. His primary concern is regime survival, which is a framing issue the one arrow doesn't drop. He's pragmatic and he'll weigh costs and benefits. Even he wants to expand it in the long term. He does perceive nuke umbrella as credible. We've read the 2NC Chong and K evidence and the 1NC evidence that says that North Korea will temper their hand. They'll be less likely to nuclear coerce because they think that it would mean the United States lashing out, which is especially true under Trump because he's unpredictable. They've conceded no draw-in, which means that Russia and China won't get drawn in because they're not close enough to the region to get drawn in, and they know they have to face the United States, which means one, North Korea knows this and is less likely to lash out, and two, who the F cares if the United States lashes out against North Korea? At best, it's a limited conflict, whereas we have hypersonic nuclear war. Oh, I forgot to take the camera plan. Concede the perm. There was no arguments about rejecting the team. New apps, obviously, we get anything we want, non-cost options. Yeah.
Yeah, we have 5:24. We'll start. Okay, is everyone good? Just let me set up real quick, but it's obviously going to be the case disad. Jesus, this is loud. Sorry. Okay, anyone not good? Perfect. Cold conceded in the 2NR is a SOCO preemption argument. It's isolated from all of Aiden's analysis about North Korean confidence. SOCO predicts that future nuclear modernization will cause North Korea to be a serious threat to their regime's survival. They think that BMD is the crucial internal link to being able to deter that. That's all of our internal link evidence external to leave. They'll preemptively strike North Korea in an attempt to maintain a nuclear edge. That causes a large escalating war. North Korea strikes back and China gets drawn in. Their arguments about no draw-in are ridiculous. The only warrant is extended is that they're not close enough and that it'd be limited with no warrants. China literally borders North Korea. I don't understand how that works. The economic incentive for China to get drawn in and try to deter South Korea would get the United States involved as well, and it would totally spur an all-out war. External to that, nuclear coercion from North Korea does matter. They are confident now. They think that they are, because of the revisionism debate that goes cold conceded, because they are an expansionist power, they continue even if they think that their regime survival is on the line because they want more. They turns case and alliances are thumped is not to an argument. It's brand new extrapolation, and we conceded all causes to the SOCO-Japan alliance rift, which means that BMD would still be implemented despite that, and which is the only thing that our internal link is rely on. North Korea is confident in their ability to nuclearly coerce. They can only do small-scale things. They don't think that it'd be challenging U.S. superiority, but the SOCO sphere is the only thing that would get the United States involved to try to bring back the alliance. The difference in the claim that there's no evidence between a difference in North Korean perception is factually incorrect. The Leaf evidence does a great job of explaining it, but even if all the SOCO stuff is isolated, the arguments about even if revisionism because of Trump don't make sense in a level where they do lower level aggression that they don't think would respond to reaction that they don't think the United States would respond to with nukes. Circumvent all their arguments about Kim rationality. Trump might not strike. Kim wouldn't intentionally do it, but he might accidentally do it, which is a large risk. Try or die affirmative is super important because you know of the status quo, the South Korea preemption causes a large-scale war with at least the United States and North Korea, which is a large risk of nuclear winter and extinction. The Lockheed Martin dissent. Look, I don't sound quite, but this dissent makes no sense, and you can't vote on it. There's a huge disconnect between the internal link and the impact. All of their impact evidence, at least in the 1NC and all or most in the 1NR, was about hypersonic arms racing, which doesn't make sense in a world where the United States tries to keep fighting back at China with the development of hypersonics, which means if anything, the dissent is totally backwards in terms link, and trying to get back at China only causes more escalatory problems, which increases the risk of miscalc. There's two internal links. The first is capabilities, but they cold conceded the card in the 2AC. That was the hypersonics are the same as BMDs. There's no way that there's a difference in capability because they can enter at high hypersonic speeds. The second is perception, but countries aren't just stupid. Obviously, if a professor can figure out that there's no difference, countries wouldn't switch to a launch on warning that runs the risk of them being totally first struck and destroy all diplomatic ties because they think there's a difference. That makes no sense. There's no turn case argument. One, the NOCO hypersonic exists, which was their argument about coercion, so it doesn't matter. NOCO will never be able to fight the U.S. on a hypersonic level. And two is that the destabilizing portions rely on a construed connection of what the hypersonics say it leads to arms racing, but that makes no sense in the context of what the dissad attempts to make the United States do. There's terminal uniqueness problems as well, because one, you know that there's at least going to be regional destabilization, which is enough to trigger the arms racing impacts that they go for, which we all agree are probably pretty bad. And two, because of power projection is terminally unstable. One, because of the US's ability to unrun its alliances in terms of North Korea, and two, because of the economy thing that they conceded on the other flow, which means that the United States will never be able to reject power. Lockheed is largely resilient. First is the
US government bailout. Their argument that the United States wouldn't try to develop its hypersonic program is ridiculous, even if it meant that funding a little bit more than $4 billion to try to match Lockheed's potential additions to the funding. They'd still do it too. Is that if Lockheed can survive the coronavirus, they can survive anything. The F-35 production cut, but they still expected future funds and still maintained all their projects. There's no evidence comparison is justified. The 1NR didn't make evidence prudence, and the 1AR made the claim about their F being wrong. It gave one example. 2NR new evidence comparison justifies it in the 2AR. There's no trade-off at all. The 2NR was about their global budget. It doesn't say hypersonics at all. They read 0 pieces of evidence that hypersonics is on Lockheed's shopping block. They'll cut other things first. 0% link. Vote F instantly. $4 billion is nothing. They have way more funds, trillions and trillions of dollars of other things like F-35s massively outweigh the Crane evidence. The 1AR one, we didn't have to read it because it was one that they read. The government is bailing them out now. It postdates all of their arguments about Lockheed being necessary. The second is the foreign policy. Trump is developing fast hypersonics. The second is a $2.5 billion budget to Lockheed Martin. That was Crane. The third is Pollock 20. The estimated cost is $928 billion. Look, there's no dissent here. It's construed.
Good debate.
Good debate.
Do you want a card doc?
Yes. Yes.
All right, cool. Make one.
Okay, are we all here? We're good. So I voted neg. This was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be after the 2AR, mainly because of this pivot to emphasizing the South Korea preemption argument. I thought was very smart. And I did think it made a lot of the 2NR defense on the advantage substantially worse and even mostly go away, right? Because most of the 2NR is about this North Korea coercion internal link. And I do agree with the 2AR that the AF has been consistent about this separate internal link to a conflict scenario. In truth, I have some doubts about this because I do not think the 1AC has a single card that is about LRDR or South Korea's perception of BMD integration, stopping them from launching preemptive attacks in any way. But again, I think the AF is pretty consistent about this, and it kind of leaves the neg with two defensive arguments left. The first is this no drawing argument, which I actually also resolve in favor of the AF. My biggest issue is that MBA, you have not read a card that says what you think it says. So after the 2NR, I'm pretty confident that you're doing well on this, but what this 2NC card actually says is that if US and its allies tried to get North Korea to denuclearize, the PRC and Russia should not intervene into that process by trying to block that denuclearization campaign, because that would cause war, and that limited war would be bad for economic reasons. It would cut them off from markets, etc. So it does not say that they shouldn't get involved or defend North Korea in a conflict once that conflict has already started. It almost maybe says the opposite, which is something maybe the AF should point out. Like maybe they have an incentive to get involved and try to keep the conflict from happening, but that's not really here nor there. So I thought on the case page proper, there was a lot higher risk of an advantage than I thought there would be, like a lot higher risk. I think this leaves the 2NR with pretty much the only defensive argument of this case turn argument. But I think that this is articulated really smartly in the 2NR and interacts. The thing that's frustrating about this is that the way they've articulated this interacts only with the North Korea coercion internal link, right? They've read a card that says hypersonics make diplomatic bargaining difficult, which the 2NR has explained as meaning that North Korea would try to take advantage of the US and exercise this like coercive power that you've talked about. I think the 2AR should have gone all in on the South Korea preemption argument, conceded all of the arguments for why North Korea would never start a war. You know, Kim's not stupid. He cares about regime survival, all of those things. And then explicitly said that that answers this turns case articulation, because the war can only start from South Korea's point, and they have not explained why the DA interacts with that internal link. And that, I think, would have won you this debate. But as is, this internal or this turns case argument does interact with your impact a lot, even if not the internal link that you're going for to that impact. So it does still matter. Even after resolving all of this, I still felt like I was pretty close to voting AF. but I could not come up with a 2AR argument against this DA that I feel like I could tell the neg A was not new and B makes sense or wasn't just beaten down by the 2NR, which I know is maybe frustrating to hear, but I think your impact defense argument is answered really well by the neg. They're right that the only card that you've read says we need to build up our defense and deterrence capabilities in hypersonics, which is what the DA is about. They're out carding you like 8-0 on this COVID thumper, which is only a blip in the 2AR. The thing that gives me the biggest pause is this rhetorical kind of like, come on, this DSAT is stupid. The government would obviously bail them out. Hypersonics aren't on the chopping block now. They have no evidence about this. I think one, that you've conceded that Lockheed needs to supplement federal bailouts with their own money in order for that R&D to be effective, which there is a card on. I think that card happens in the 2NR, I believe. And two, there is this card they have that's like budget cuts to hypersonics have happened in the past. So it is feasible that they would be something on the chopping block, right? I don't think it's true that just because something is important for deterrence means that the federal government like knows that and prioritizes that inherently. And third, that I think the link is really big. I don't think there's a ton of 2NR pushback on this. They read a pretty good card about future conflict or future contracts that LRDR would get Lockheed Martin. And your assertion is kind of like, $4 billion, that's nothing. Lockheed Martin has trillions of dollars, but they do not, like, that's the whole of US GDP is like $20 trillion. So I don't, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't think they have trillions of dollars. I just.
Yeah, I mean, that was an overestimate, definitely. My bad.
Okay. A trillion is a lot of dollars is what I'm saying. I don't think that's true. But yeah, that's kind of the short of it. I'm happy to answer questions.
I guess this is always like the 2AR strategy when it comes to these kind of debates, but how do you resolve just like NOCO or SOCO preemption, try or die framing, I suppose?
Well,
I might just be missing something, but
like, yes, you've said the word try or die, but the neg has made an argument that the status quo or the AF will also cause that same impact, right? Like this turns case argument is, you can think of it offensively in a way. It's not just a defensive argument.
So just like the Korean War in general, okay, never mind. I get it. That's fine.
Yeah, I don't know you've never tried to distinguish those impacts.
No, you're right. That's my bad.
Maybe there's a way to do that, but I don't really think so. But I do think that there's a way for, I'm not telling you that this is like, I'm not like, oh, this turns case arg was so good and the case was tiny. The case was massive. This Kearns case arg kind of is like the teeny thing that saves the neg's butt. I don't know. I agree in principle that this DA is stupid. I don't think the 2AC says anything in that line. And I think the neg is very consistently saying that I should not evaluate new arguments. I agree, like all the 2AC does is read like, I don't know, 2 or 3 cards. None of these like little, none of this like, well, the federal government will bail them out or hypersonics aren't on the chopping block, or that some of the smarter arguments I think you have by the end of the debate are not in the beginning.
Okay, why
and are
wasn't
not
the
carded.
justifications that those were just like pulling lines from their evidence to supplement those arguments?
Well,
or to support those args from new cards made in the 1NR?
I mean, that's not really what it's doing, right? And also I don't
Like
know,
government funding key one?
The government funding. They've read a card that says Lockheed Martin always has to supplement government funding with their own money for the R&D to be effective. That's like a 2NR card, I think.
Well, let me pull up the 2NR ones again.
I don't know. Regardless of like what card.
Okay, it says company-funded R&D costs are 1.3 billion, and then like we read says the government is giving them multiple billions of dollars.
I mean, the 2 hour did not quantify that, right? Like, I agree with you in principle, but the 2AR says like a couple of one sentence things that are kind of haphazardly thrown on the flow, and are not, in my mind, a good enough break to this very strongly articulated DA in the 2AR or 2NR.
Okay. Well, thanks.
So obviously I had that down. I forgot about the SOCO preemption stuff. Do you think the leaf, if I'd articulated like the leaf indict about perception of the radar?
Yes.
Okay. Like just applied, like they have no evidence SOCO perceives it?
This like South Korea perception internal link they're going for is really like one line of one card that says that's a possible way a conflict can start. I have no idea what the F has to do with that.
Yeah.
So I think like you're right to be more concerned about this North Korea coercion internal link, because that is the one that makes logically more sense. But you also have to answer the other one.
Gotcha. Do you think was it even worth extending like the cross application from the other page about allies being fractured inevitably?
Sorry, repeat
So
that.
like I thought the one I articulated, like alliance, the impact to coercion being like it undermines the LIO and alliance cohesion. And then the 2NC were like all causes to cohesion. Obviously, should I not have, was it a waste of time to classify that and impact it out?
I didn't really get.
Yeah, that's fine. It was disjointed. Yeah.
And then, I didn't get that. Like you asking that now, I didn't even realize that that was what you were trying to do, to be honest, in the 2NR.
Yeah, that's fair. Awesome.
Okay, so Nina, I guess I just have one more question about the turns case arguments.
Yeah.
What do you think was like I mean, obviously the 2AR wasn't very good on this either, but just like what was the scenario for a sort of regional destabilization, external to the US and China in a world of hypersonic deterrence collapse?
Also, I think the way the 2NR is talking about it is they're using this card that they've read that's about diplomacy and negotiations to apply the language of your coercion internal link. So to say hypersonics broadly degrade the perception of US deterrence, which makes North Korea think coercive actions would be more fruitful, would be more successful, they're more likely to try them if US deterrence like generally is sort of on the down, if the US doesn't have a ton of leveraging power. Like the thing that gives me the most pause is like the 2AR, I think you say like the words North Korea can't beat the US. North Korea can't fight the US on hypersonics. And I know what you're trying to say is like, obviously this can't be a leveraging chip if North Korea doesn't have hypersonics, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe I misunderstood which level of the advantage it was accessing.
I think it's just accessing the impact. Or sorry, no.
Or just the
I
internal
think
link, you mean?
it's accessing the internal link, yes, sorry.
So,
That's why I think that had you strictly committed to this South Korea preemption internal link and conceded explicitly all of their arguments about North Korea, made it very, very clear why those don't apply to the internal link you're going for, and made it very clear why those get out of the turns case argument, recognize and say to me they have no defense left, answer the draw in thing as their only terminal piece of defense, I think you're in a much better spot. But you're letting them get away with muddling your advantage, sort of.
no, yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, I'm just reading cards.
It's okay.
I think I'm good for questions.
I know you didn't look through the EV or anything or like compare the warrants, but the counter plan, did you have any thoughts on the theory and extension of it?
Like, I liked it. I'm obviously glad for the theory stuff on your end. I don't like this perm aff that you're going for. I don't think it's as like cool as you think it is. I think it's pretty easy for the neg to just win. The intrinsicness is bad, especially without an external aff sort of theoretical push on the counter plan.
The neg winning that counterplans don't need to be functionally or and textually competitive, alongside winning that perm is intrinsic.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the input. I think it's very easy for the neg to win that functionally intrinsic permutations are bad.
All right.
Right? What's to stop the F from, politics is a net benefit. Permutation.
Textual
GDF.
competition. You can't add additional words. You can only take away words from the counterplan.
Yeah, maybe that's fair. Like I said, maybe you're really good at explaining the style of perm. I'm not saying this was a dead end for you, but I don't. It seems like that's why I was saying without a stronger theoretical push from you, right? The theory argument you make in the 2AC against this counterplan is fiating actors besides the US is bad. That does not couple with this permutation.
Oh yeah, I mean they're distinct args. But why do you need a theory arg if you're winning a model of competition and a perm that's legitimate under it?
Because the way that the best way for the neg to answer it is to say textually or functionally intrinsic permutations, even if textually non-intrinsic, make counterplans like these that compete off of X set of things unviable and impact that out, right? So you need a justification for why those counterplans are bad and why it is theoretically legitimate to limit them out by making permutations like this.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'm good. Good debate, y'all.
Good luck, y'all.
Yeah.
You too.
Thank you.